We want to bring in Dr. Qanta Ahmed, Muslim scholar, author of the book In the Land of Women. Much has been made, Doc, about the optics of this trip so far. One thing that President Trump and Chris Wallace mentioned a few moments ago on our show that the president, when he was still campaigning, had said was that Islam hates us. That was back then. He's walked that back, of course. Do you think that he'll address what his words today will be strong enough to make waves and change this fight in that region?
I mean, the excerpt that you just read to us is extremely promising. This is something that I've argued for years that the last administration failed to do. Saudis, Egyptians, UAE Arabs, Pakistanis, we all know as Muslims jihadism is the enemy, and this is part of Islamism. It is not part of Islam. So that will be hitting a spectacular note. By the way, these incredible images are a reminder to those that don't know the value Islam places on honoring a guest. While this is an incredible honor for the United States, the honor is actually for the Muslim world. Welcome to the Muslim world, America. That's what we're seeing. And this speech is going to bring together the fractious Muslim world in a way no other has. There's no comparison to the 2009 Cairo speech, where President Obama himself invited 10 Muslim Brotherhood leaders, insisting that they be there. And they, of course, proved to the Egyptian people that they were truly totalitarian. This is an absolute rejection of that policy.
Well, Doctor, I know you've written a lot about this, the Muslim community having to step up in this fight against terror, and that is a point that the president is going to make in the speech in about an hour. He says this, I'll read it to you. He says, religious leaders must make this absolutely clear. Barbarism will deliver you no glory. Piety to evil will bring you no dignity. If you choose the path of terror, your life will be empty, your life will be brief, and your soul will be condemned. Some very powerful words there to the religious leaders in that area. What do you make of that?
Well, absolutely. And echoes. We just saw images of President al-Sisi arriving, one of the final guests to arrive, indicating the stature of his president. President al-Sisi, a few days around the Charlie Hebdo massacres in Paris, delivered a similarly stinging rebuke to Islamic scholars to appeal to them to reject these devious texts that do promote jihadist ideology. So it will be perfectly in tune and very, very welcome. Additionally, it is what we ourselves as Muslims feel about these ideologies. It's going to go well. I think this speech will be even more striking than the State of the Union that the president delivered early on in his presidency.
Doctor, you talk about the importance of honor and respect in the Muslim world. Talk to us about the reception that President Trump received coming off that plane versus President Obama just a year ago. Great
question, Peter. I mean, remarkable that an octogenarian Saudi king who is robust but with some health challenges, uses a cane, stood there in 107-degree heat. I know that heat. I've lived in Saudi Arabia for 2 years, in order to greet the President of the United States on the tarmac. That's something our own president does not do to foreign dignitaries. It's really very heartening. And can I tell you, it is refreshing, because here in the United States, I'm exhausted with the denigration, the cannibalization, our own self-destruction by tearing apart this presidency. Whatever one's politics, this president, I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote for the other candidate either. But I support this president, and it's a reminder, an important perspective for Americans, how we should be valuing our own presidency, flaws and all.
Dan Bongino, sitting with us on the couch, the move to try to get some of those wealthy elites in Saudi Arabia who have been funding the radical Islamist movement in Saudi Arabia. Do you think that this speech, do you think that this meeting will give that strength to the Saudi Arabian government to make significant moves to try to stop that?
You know, gosh, I hope so, because that's where the crackdown has to happen. The Saudis certainly have the internal security capabilities to shut this down if they needed to, but there's always been resistance because they're afraid of an internal backlash, and that's the natural consequence of, frankly, being involved in a monarchy. It's not a democratic country. It's not a constitutional republic like us. So they're always balancing this delicate authoritarianism they're trying to maintain with trying to keep some of these funders of terror, you know, just from overthrowing them as well. But they're going to have to make a choice soon.
That's a great point. And, Doctor, we've continue to have live images here. That's our Secretary of State with presumably a Saudi member of the Saudi monarchy there as well. We've seen the president talking to the king in real time ahead of his his historic address. Doctor, to that point, what more can the House of Saud, the ruling class of Saudi Arabia, do to clamp down on the poisonous ideology that others are funding, whether it's Wahhabism or Salafism, and is really the madrasas ayatollahs and mosques around the globe that are poisoning the minds of young Muslims.
So they're already into approximately a 14-year effort doing that. We will never forget 9/11 in this city, nor will the world. And I was in Riyadh on that day. 2 years after 9/11, Riyadh faced its own assault by al-Qaeda, hitting 3 civilian compounds. Many of my physician colleagues at the King Fahd National Guard Hospital took care of the victims. One of them was the son of King Salman. He was then governor of Riyadh. So they have muzzled the religious police. They're not allowed now to prowl around ad-lib. They have created a robust anti-jihadist program, and they are collaborating in their intelligence, as we learned earlier on with Israel, and they are not alone. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates have outlawed and rendered illegal the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the mothership of Islamist terrorism. If you want to look at a root cause, please look at that. The Muslim Brotherhood and sycophants of the Muslim Brotherhood, who are also found here in the United States, are what really preach this. So one of the things I'm concerned about is how Qatar is feeling in all of this.
Yeah.
Part of the GCC nations, but underwriting Muslim Brotherhood ideology.
Doctor, quickly, just a real quick follow-up. It may seem small, but I think it's an important distinction. How much of this crackdown is to preserve their own regime, and how much of it is a true recognition that radical Islam and its ideology is a problem?
Great question. Do you know, I think it's even more profound than the preservation of the monarchy. Not only Saudi Arabia, but Muslim leaders around the world recognize it is Islam that is at stake. Nobody has more to lose than Muslims who follow Islam. And if we do not eventually get this right, our religion is going to be desecrated beyond the levels in which it is now. President Sisi appealed to the scholars at Al-Azhar. Please, Islam's name has been muddied by this radical ideology. We have to eliminate it. So the stakes are much higher than the Saudi monarchy.